Hi, and welcome to the Changing Perspectives podcast, the show where we discuss a variety of topics including grief, parenting, health and wellness, and relationships. Join us and explore a number of changing perspectives. We are your hosts, Jenni and Josh Brennan. Hey, Jenni.
Hi.
Our co-hosts today are Everett and Lola,
who can't get settled to save their life.
So we're back. Happy Thursday, everybody. We are on our summer episode release schedule once a week, so I hope everybody had a great week and enjoyed our trip report episode. That was a fun episode to record. Listening to the playback, I got more and more excited about our, now I'm hitting the mic stand, about our upcoming trip.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't actually listened to that episode.
You
But
didn't?
no,
You always listen.
I don't think I did. I haven't. I don't know what it is, but summer hit and I became completely overwhelmed and can't get out of my own way.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't know what it is. I think,
You got a lot of stuff up in the air.
and I think it's just, I'm teaching 3 classes right now. And I think when summer hit, basically sort of midterms hit for all 3 classes. So all the papers were due, just the level of intensity kicked up on those. And now the boys are home for the summer, so our schedule is different.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. This week I feel like I have a little more breathing room than
That's
I have.
good.
I feel like I'm starting to catch my breath. Like I haven't been posting on Instagram. I haven't been writing. I haven't published any new articles. Work on my book has sort of come to a screeching halt, but it's not like I'm doing nothing. Like I'm still getting up at the same time. Every single minute of my day is still filled.
I think it's teaching, the extra classes.
I think it is.
Yeah.
And I did 2, I just finished, you know what it is? It's my University of Phoenix classes, because I just did 2 back-to-back classes for them on a new platform, and that really took a lot of my time.
That's kind of that's your extra time. And
that was my extra time. And I just finished all my papers for that like 3 days ago, which is basically when I started feeling I had like a little more time.
Well, and you did a lot of podcast related work and blogging and writing during your quote unquote free time, whereas now, over the past few weeks, it's been taken over by teaching.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, we're okay. We still love you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
I
didn't think you didn't love me anymore.
It's all good. So it's okay that you didn't listen to last episode, but it's good. You should listen to it. And I love the format of our show. We continue to do different things and sprinkle in different topics. And if you like hearing about different things, hopefully you're tuning in. Like us, review us. The more you like and review and share, the farther reach our content gets, and more our fan base can grow. And we just want to reach people and hopefully offer some folks different perspectives on lots of different topics. But we are now on episode 33. I still can't believe we've gone. Oh, I like your nails, by the way.
Thanks, but I was yawning.
Yeah, I felt like you were showing me your nails.
I was not. I'm very relaxed.
You just got your nails done.
I just got back from getting my nails done.
Yeah. Well, listen, we are at episode 33. Our plan for today is to do something very cool and fun and easy, just because it's on everybody's mind and something that we really enjoy. But we're going to do another TV review. This is not going to be pint size. This should be a normal size episode. But we're going to do another TV review, another Netflix special. And this is a review of Stranger Things 3.
True.
Yes. So what comes to mind right at the beginning for you? We just finished watching it. We binged it. We've watched all 3 seasons with our boys, all 4 of us.
Well, we just binged the 3rd season.
We just binged the 3rd season, but we've binged all of them when they came out. Love when Netflix does that, just drops them all at once. So what is your first initial reaction?
Crap, I didn't prepare any notes.
Okay. But that's good, though. Sometimes that's really good content.
Well,
I
first,
did. I have lots of notes.
I know. I ray on you for that.
Oh, spoilers, by the way.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Hello, spoilers.
Yes, spoilers.
Alert, spoilers.
Yes. So we will talk about...
If you have not watched yet any Stranger Things, but especially season 3, pause this right now, go watch it, and then unpause. and come back and join us. Join the conversation.
So this makes me think of someone. Everett's very upset by that. This makes me think of someone a couple of weeks ago.
Everett does not like spoilers.
Who was, I don't know what the right word is, who was just really irritated that when they went to see
Yes.
Spider-Man,
Mm-hmm.
that
No. Trailer for Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, what did they go see? They saw
Toy
Captain
Story
Marvel.
4, maybe? No.
They saw something. They saw something, and like 2 weeks ago, and the trailer. There was a trailer for Spider-Man in it, and they were horrified that there was a Spider-Man trailer in there that gave away a big plot point in Iron Man.
No, in Endgame.
Oh gosh, Endgame. Yes, about Iron Man.
About Iron Man.
Yeah. So I feel like, though, if you're this far out from Stranger Things 3 and you haven't had that ending spoiled, it's time to get it spoiled.
That's right. It did drop on the 1st, right? July 1st?
No, it was July 4th, I think.
July 4th. So
Yeah.
we are 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
No. So you should have had plenty of time.
That's my point.
But
I feel like in today's day and age, you've got a window of maybe 3 days to not have stuff spoiled for you.
Right.
If you are at all on social media or go to the movies or watch TV or talk to people ever or have a radio, you're going to have stuff spoiled.
Right.
So, but fair warning, if you haven't watched it yet,
Yes.
go watch it because we're
Pause
going to be
and
talking
watch.
about it. So to get back to your question, what was my original
Gut reaction
gut reaction?
after finishing season 3.
I feel like it's pretty grief heavy. I feel like there's a grief sort of storyline there.
Well, did you like it?
I actually don't know if I liked it.
Interesting.
Actually, I don't really know if I like Stranger Things. If I'm
See,
being honest,
It's
I only watch it. I think if it weren't for you guys, did you just shut my mic off?
No.
I can't hear myself anymore.
Hmm.
I think if it wasn't for you guys, then I wouldn't be watching. It would be something I'd be like, maybe I'll watch that at
I don't
some
think
point.
you would watch it by yourself.
I don't like scary monster things.
Well, sci-fi, fantasy is not really your thing.
No.
What I will say, though, you enjoy watching stuff with us.
Yes.
And it's the nostalgia. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but this nostalgia piece, I think, resonates with you a little bit. But you weren't a boy in the 80s, so
yeah.
it doesn't resonate with you as much as it does with me. But a lot of the stuff with this season with the mall, I think hopefully that resonated with you. I would assume.
Did, but I don't know that it was like nostalgic. I kind of feel like when I watched The Goldbergs, which is a network television series that's set in the 80s, I feel like that for me is more nostalgic. And
Yeah.
maybe even the spinoff of The Goldbergs, which is Schooled,
90s.
which is the
That's us.
90s. I feel like that's more nostalgic for me. I feel like
Okay.
Stranger Things is set in the early 80s. It feels more early 80s, and I wasn't that age in the early 80s.
Right, but
I'm more of a like late 80s, early 90s girl.
well, you were born.
But I don't remember 1982 or
Right,
83
but
or
I
84.
think that for a guy growing up in the 80s, even though, I didn't hit adolescence until just about the 90s,
Yeah.
right? However, pop culture and all of those things that were big for little boys growing up in the 80s, Transformers, G.I. Joe, the A-Team, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Transformer, I said that already. But all of those things, regardless of, I think, when you were born, even if, I didn't really hit adolescence until late 80s, early 90s, all of those things were still huge. Indiana Jones, Star Wars, those defined my childhood.
I
Even
don't
though
know
they
what
happened
defined my childhood.
before.
I don't think anything pop culture-y defined my childhood. We didn't.
For me,
We didn't watch
for sure.
movies. We didn't watch TV together.
Yeah, you didn't.
We
You
didn't
had a
go to the
weird
movies.
childhood.
It's a separate issue, separate episode. Like we didn't go to the movies together. I think our boys are having a very different childhood than I had,
yeah.
but probably a very similar childhood to the one you had.
A lot of
Like-
a lot of similarities. My dad worked a ton, so I didn't see him a lot.
But I feel like you guys
But-
were sort of a movie family. You would go to
Yes.
the movies. You would sort of watch TV together. So pop culture was big. And I think for our boys, pop culture for them will be big. They'll look back on it and remember it, but I didn't. And so I didn't really start getting into pop culture stuff until I guess I was old enough to go hang out with friends and like go to the mall. And
that's why
that was later in life. That wasn't
the
like
90s resonate with you.
Yeah, it was. The mall wasn't quite like it was in Stranger Things 3 for me. So the nostalgia piece isn't really that big. The music, I think music resonates more with me from that time period because I would just listen to it myself and I would watch MTV a lot. So the music was nostalgic for me. But I didn't really like emotionally connect. And I know artistically they were trying to shoot it like it came from that time period.
That's on my list to talk about.
And I actually found that quite annoying.
I didn't like it.
I didn't like it. I get the artistic point behind it, and I love like artsy cinematography, and I love sort of unpacking why things are shot a certain way. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that they were trying to make it look like something that came out of that time period. But I don't really like stuff that came out of that time period.
It didn't look like...
It felt hokey.
It didn't look like it came... so... Stranger Things is akin to, it's sci-fi fantasy, right? It's adventure. It's sci-fi fantasy adventures, Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones.
It didn't feel like any of that. It felt like early Punky Brewster.
Yes. Like when Punky Brewster filmed scenes outside.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, out of the
cheesy
studio.
drama. Yeah, like when Cherry got stuck in the fridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that episode.
Or what else am I thinking of?
It's like when, after school special, like some sort of cheesy sitcom from the 80s with a message.
But when a sitcom films outside of the studio, they film like in a field or something, or when Full House went to a picnic or something.
Yeah.
Like that was the film. That's the way it felt, the look and feel. And I wasn't digging it so much. There's a thread going on one of my movie Facebook groups right now about Stranger Things 3, and this, let's get a conversation going. So I added my thoughts about the way it was filmed, and I'm waiting for people to see what they thought about it. But that's the one thing about the season I didn't like. I love the rest of it.
I guess we have different views. I kind of feel like it was like a filler. When you're watching a series and there's a story arc and then there's essentially like a filler episode that kind of is just supposed to bridge two sort of plot points, and not a lot really happens, but it's just there to kind of fill time and present a little bit of info.
Well, I
kind of feel like the season was a filler season. And sort of in a way felt messy, like adolescence. Like I really think it just kind of got us to the end of season 3, like the post-credit scene where we're like, well, what? Who's the American? Is he alive? Is he not? And so I feel like I wasn't blown away by it.
Well, let's back up a little bit. I get your point, but I think that there was a lot about the plot and the story arc that moved the characters along as far as character development. But I get your point about the filler. So let's just do a quick plot summary. So we've got
you do that.
Okay. So we are back in Hawkins. We have the main characters sort of living their lives. It's been about 9 months, I think 10 months since the events of season 2. By the way, I like season 2. I think I ended up liking season 3 better than season 2. Nothing beats season 1. So good.
Yes.
So we open up in 1984 with seeing some sort of Soviet Russia evil guys doing some sort of experiment. It's clearly looking like they're trying to access the Upside Down. And then we fast forward, some bad stuff happens. It's a little bit of foreshadowing. Fast forward a year. And now we're back in Hawkins, and we end up having basically 2 antagonists in this season. One is the group of evil Russian scientists. And then we've got the Mind Flayer, which is basically the evil monster in the Upside Down. So there's our 2 antagonists. But what I like about this season is we've got basically 4 groups of heroes. the protagonists, all doing sort of their own thing, but they're all investigating or involved with some different angle of the stuff that's the bad stuff happening, right? And sort of at the end, they come together and battle together. So the four groups are, Nancy and Jonathan, who now work in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like the way they portrayed mid 1980s sort of office sexism?
Yes, actually, I
liked it
did.
a lot,
I appreciated
actually.
that. Yeah, I appreciated sort of the social commentary about it. Yes.
I loved how she told Jonathan, like, you don't understand. Like,
right.
you're experiencing this differently than I'm experiencing
Yes.
this. It was very woke, actually. And then you have the Hopper and Joyce group, which they end up meeting up with Dr. Alexei, who is becoming a fan favorite for this season. And then Murray, the covert conspiracy theorist guy who happens to speak Russian, so he can translate for them. And then we have the Steve, Robin, Dustin, Erica group, who I love Steve. I love that character. I love the arc that he took and the change that he made in season 2 and become sort of besties with Dustin and experience all that trauma together, fighting the demigorgons. And now they're together. They're discovering the Russian spy code. And I love the new character, Robin. Do you know who plays Robin?
She is the daughter of Uma Thurman.
Yeah, and
Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
I told you that.
You did?
Yeah, on the couch one night. And you were like, oh. So clearly you weren't listening.
Oh. Mm-hmm. I knew I heard it from somewhere. I thought I heard it at work yesterday.
Nope, it was me.
Okay. Good job.
Oh, see, Everett's mad.
And then you have finally the core group, the main sort of D&D group, which is Max, Mike, Lucas, Will, and Elle.
Yeah, who are terrible friends.
Yes. And so this group... To Dustin.
Thank God Dustin has Steve.
I know. So I did find it kind of sad that he wasn't really with his group this season.
So I was thinking this morning, and I shared this. There was an article. Maybe we need to do a whole episode about this one. But there was an article that came up on my feed this morning from... Where did it come from? Oh, Higher Perspective, which is a site I follow on Facebook that you probably do not, Josh. But it's like good, insightful stuff. So usually when I wake up before I get out of bed, I sort of see what's on there. And so it was 6 signs of a true friend. I don't think many of these apply to Dustin's friends. 1, they stick with you no matter what. Nope. They totally forgot about him. Like no one is like, where's Dustin? He's kind of missing. 2, they accept you as you are. I don't think so.
Nope.
Number 3, there is no shortage of support. He's like stuck in the bowels of the mall, and no one seems to know he's even missing.
Right.
4, they make time for you. Nope. 5, you feel totally comfortable around them. I mean, at the end when he has to sing, he seems very uncomfortable having to do that in front of his friends.
I don't want to talk about that yet.
Who don't believe that his girlfriend is real.
Susie.
And they are honest with you. I don't know that they are really honest with him. I think Dustin might need some new friends.
He might. However, you're a developmental specialist. Is that developmentally appropriate, all those actions?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like, and that's a list about adults there, adult friendships.
Right.
We're looking at adolescence, and I do think the way they portrayed adolescence was spot on. It's messy.
Yes.
Feelings get hurt. Friends kind of struggle with romantic relationships and how do you be in a romantic relationship as a teenager, and what do you do when your friends are in romantic relationships and then there's conflict?
Right.
Yes, I think all of that
this group
was spot on.
This group, as far as the 4 protagonist group, they were slow to start. They ended up basically being connected to Billy, who was the main, an extension of the Mind Flayer. And that's Max's older brother, who was, possessed. He was the main possessee, I guess. They were slow to start as far as their connection to the mission, the overall goal, and that was to obviously defeat the Russians and close close up the Upside Down, because they were so self-involved with their relationships, right?
Yes.
Like, we'll talk about Elle in a little bit, but they were all sort of doing their own thing, and they didn't sort of get on the bus, so to speak, as far as fighting the bad guys until a little bit later than everybody else. Everybody
True.
else seemed to be right off the bat. I mean, first episode, Dustin's like, I hear Russians.
Yes.
And everybody else was sort of along, Joyce was like, what's up with the magnets right at the beginning? And these guys are just focused on their relationships, making out. So anyway, we see all of our heroes come together towards the end. Different things happen all throughout. Don't want to give, I guess, too much of the details away if you haven't watched it, but they come together at the end at the Battle of Starcourt Mall.
They defeat the bad guys, blah, blah, blah. Oh, wait, maybe they're not really defeated.
Maybe they're not really defeated. But I think that as far as filler goes, I agree. Like, this didn't end. Like, there was not an ending, I feel like, to this season, as was with other seasons, right? I love the way season 1 ended when you see Hopper going in the woods, leaving the waffles for Elle.
See, you're looking at me. You know this about me. My brain doesn't work that way, so I don't remember. The other night we watched, one of the great things about parenting is that you get to relive things with your kids. So we get to watch movies that we've seen with our kids.
Yeah.
Like, they get to watch them for the first time. And you and I always reference M. Night Shyamalan's The Signs, that movie.
Spoiler alert, by the way.
Okay, if you haven't seen that.
2002.
2002, get on it. I won't spoil it, but I tend to historically always have a cup of water or 7
multiple
around the house, and Josh always makes fun of me, unfinished, and says, what are you waiting for, the aliens? And there's a because in Signs there's a connection between
waters. Alien reference.
Yes. And so he made the reference to me the other night, and the boys were like, what are you talking about? And we said, oh, you have to watch Signs with us. Where was I going with this? Oh, so I've seen Signs. We reference it all the time. And for me, it was like watching it for the very first time.
Because you forget.
Because that's how my brain works. I watch something, I'm in it, and then my brain's like, great, this is useless information, filters it out, replaces it with something else. So I don't remember. Now that you've said that, okay, I kind of remember that. But I wouldn't be able to have pulled that out for myself.
But the way this season ended for sure felt like not an ending. The way, Elle is... Well, let's say it again one more time. Just a big reminder. Spoiler alert.
Okay.
We think that Hopper has died in this season. So we've got at the end of the season, the buyers are moving, and now they've sort of taken on Elle. So I guess Joyce is now her guardian. And so they're all leaving. We'll talk about loss, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. But they're all leaving, and she seems to have hopefully temporarily lost her powers, or her powers are muted. So you definitely felt like, that it's not an ending for her. You want to go, okay, what's next for Elle? What's next for the buyers? What's next for Mike and Elle? And the same thing.
I don't care about Mike and Elle.
I know you didn't like that.
I don't like their relationship.
We'll talk about that. But the, of course, the post-credit scene, great. Shout out to Netflix and the Duffer Brothers for putting in this nice post-credit, excellent cliffhanger. But that, coupled with the way things were left with Elle and the buyers, definitely felt like, okay, when season 4, let's go. So I get your feeling of filler. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about the nostalgia element just one more time, because for me it was such a powerful aspect of the show, because it connects so much to my childhood. I think they nailed 1985. I think there's people all over the interwebs saying they didn't, and they got this little element wrong and this little element wrong. So I had a friend at work the other day talk about the gas nozzles at the gas station, the scene where Hopper and Joyce steal the convertible. They said the gas nozzles were too modern. There's like this some sort of element that wouldn't have been there in the 80s. So people are really looking at every little thing. But I think production design value, the attention to detail, like, oh my goodness, it is really, really well done. And so 1985. The food court, the mall itself, the mall is a character in and of itself this season. And I'm going to shout this out at the end, but I want to shout out Netflix put out a podcast. It's called Behind Stranger Things, and it's all about season 3. There's only been one episode so far. Go check that out. It's really good. Talks all about Starcourt Mall and the design, the development, how they dressed it, the whole backstory behind the scenes about how they did it. So check that out. A lot of great, fun information to listen to. But they really tried to make it like you go back in time. And a lot of the actors say it's like you go back in time when you walk on that set. They took an old mall in some suburb of Atlanta that wasn't being, used, and they completely renovated it to be the Starcourt Mall. And the Duffer Brothers talk a lot about how that is a character in this season. They wanted it to be a character. But the food court is like a food court. There's like a fountain. Remember there was a fountain in the mall and I wanted to give again a shout out to early Jenni and Josh. We spent a lot now. This was the 90s, a little different, but not all that different. We spent a lot of the time in the mall.
We did. That was where we would hang out. We would we would go get ice cream.
Yes.
Right. We would sit at the ice cream place.
And iced coffee, iced cappuccinos.
Iced cappuccinos.
Which is not a thing, but go ahead.
And we would go sit on the futons in Ames.
Yes.
Don't know how we didn't get kicked out. And just walk around the mall.
I don't think we ever bought anything.
No.
Besides food.
And we would browse through Spencer's.
Mall rats. That's what we were.
Yeah, that was...
Every now and then we go see a movie. We walk across the parking lot to go to the movie.
I don't know that we would rock, but we walked.
Of course we rock.
We walked across. Yeah, that was our life. But I feel like it wasn't that 80s when we went.
But I don't think it was that different than what was portrayed on the show.
What were some of the stores? I feel like when we were watching with the boys, there were a few stores where we were like, oh, that really was a store.
Yeah. It was Sam Goody in the show, but what was Record Town? We had Record Town.
We had Record
Town. It's pretty much Sam Goody.
Yeah.
There's
even like the Blockbuster. I don't think it was a Blockbuster, but a movie store. That's still something our kids don't really know about.
No idea. Wicks and Sticks, that was in the show, but for us it was always just Yankee Candle as a candle store. I forget what else there was, but of course there's the ice cream store. Scoops Ahoy, whatever, is fictional. I learned that from the Netflix podcast. But they of course designed it after, traditional mall. We had Friendly's. What was the other one we had?
Brigham's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had 2 different ice cream stores when we were going to the mall. And another cool fact I learned to listen to that podcast is they everything down to the uniforms. They got 80s Burger King uniforms off eBay.
Oh, that's cool.
As costumes, yeah. So it's really, check that podcast out. Anyway, for me, not just the mall, but every element of Stranger Things that has to do with nostalgia brings me back, and I think that's why I like it so much. Season 2, the Ghostbusters was such a huge movie for me. And of course, my favorite movie of all time is...
Oh, crap. Back to the Future.
Yes. That took way too long.
I was being thrown under the bus.
And it's...
Or put on the spot.
Yeah, it's put on the spot. And of course, Back to the Future is featured in episode 2 or 3. And I love how Steve keeps referring to it as that movie with Alex P. Keaton, which is consistent with the time, because all he was known for was Family Ties.
Family Ties, yeah.
So he was like, oh, Alex P. Keaton's in a movie. I don't think it was his first big movie, but it was definitely his most notable role. Michael J. Fox, of course, we're talking about. So for me, seeing that movie featured, I'm like, that's 1985, and of course that's my favorite movie of all time. I want to talk about the singing when Dustin and Susie, like that whole scene. This is towards the end where they're all coming together, and Susie is Dustin's girlfriend, who he can only talk to with his gigantic radio setup.
And his friends don't believe she's real because
Yes.
they are lousy friends. And Dustin secretly puts her on the other channel to save the world, but also to be like to his friends, screw you. My
Yeah.
girlfriend is real.
Yeah.
I hope in season 4, Dustin has new friends.
I love how they tied into needing her to help solve the code to get into the
Yes.
Russian base and everything, because she knew this nerdy number. And he met her at what I assume is like nerd camp nowhere, right?
I don't know if that's what it
Anyway.
was called. I assume.
And so they end up singing the theme song to another fantastic fantasy movie from the 80s.
Which I've never seen.
I figured you didn't. I talked about this with a friend yesterday. I said, I don't think she's even ever seen Neverending Story.
No.
We have to watch that. We have to watch it with the boys.
Wait, is there a big, weird, creepy, Star Wars-y looking flying animal thing at the end-ish?
Did you just call Falcor weird?
Maybe, if that's what I'm thinking
You
of.
just alienated and pissed off a bunch of our Changing Perspectives
I'm
fans.
really sorry. I am who I am, and I am always a disappointment about
you're
movies.
not. Well, okay,
Yeah.
maybe about movies, but Falcor is like this dragon dog.
Yeah. So maybe I
Yeah.
have seen it.
You have, I bet. The
I actually
Bastion
think
rides at
maybe
the
you
end.
watched it with Jackson when he was younger, and I
He probably doesn't remember.
sort of had it on, like I was not really paying attention. I
I
probably was
loved-
grading papers or something.
Love Neverending Story. One of the saddest, notoriously sad moments in a kid movie ever. Don't worry, it's not permanent. Should I even tell you? I
No,
shouldn't even
don't tell
you.
me.
Okay, I won't tell you. People know what I'm talking about. All I want to say is Atreyu. Anyway, Dustin and Susie sing the song, the Neverending Story theme song, which is awesome. And then that moment I was like, oh my God, I was mouthing the words along with them as we were watching, and the boys were looking at me funny. But I thought that was great, tying another, basically in the whole New Coke thing with Lucas. It felt like a New Coke commercial. Do you remember New Coke
Nope.
coming out? Yeah.
Mm-mm.
My parents didn't really let me drink soda.
Yeah.
So I don't remember even being a thing. I remember hearing about New Coke and
I
people
don't really
being
think we
mad
did
about
either.
it. Yeah. But I love how they are tying in these nostalgic elements of pop culture to the plot and those elements are helping the plot move along. Like Dustin and Susie singing the theme song to Neverending Story.
Yeah.
Finally, the last point in my nostalgia notes here are the great Cary Elwes, who is with us as playing the mayor in this season. He's kind of a creepy bad guy mayor who gets in bed with the Russians. He plays a great bad guy, but I love seeing Cary Elwes up on the Netflix screen. And you know who Cary Elwes is.
Because you told me. He's from The Princess Bride,
Yes.
right? But I wouldn't have known that.
The Dread Pirate Roberts, Wesley.
Also, I don't
Wesley.
really know if I've ever really seen
Yes,
that.
you have. I don't even want to. Don't.
Have
I'm
I
gonna
watched
pretend.
it with you?
Multiple times.
Okay.
We
See,
saw
it
it
just
with the
doesn't.
boys
My
multiple
brain
times.
doesn't fit.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Anyway, should we take a break?
Sure.
All right. We will be right back.
What's up, everybody? My name's Tim from the Shut Up and Dad podcast, and I hope you're enjoying this show. If you're looking for some laughs after you finish listening to this episode, come check out Shut Up and Dad. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and your favorite podcast platform by searching Shut Up and Dad, or simply head to our website, shutupanddad-podcast.com, where you can listen to episodes, read our blog, and find links to our show. That's shutupanddad-podcast.com.
Hey, we are back. Did you enjoy that break, Jenny?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk about real quick the character development piece of Stranger Things, just as a show in general, all 3 seasons. I want you to speak to this. I mean, but we really care about what happens to these guys, don't we?
I don't know.
You don't.
I'm not so connected to the characters.
You're not. Are you connected to a specific one?
Maybe I'm connected to the adults.
What do you care? What do you care about? How do you care? Who do you care about what happens to them?
Elle and Hopper.
Elle and Hopper. Okay.
Yeah. And Joyce.
Okay.
And Dustin.
Yeah. So you like?
And Jonathan and Nancy.
Yeah.
All the rest of them can go pound sand.
Okay.
Oh, maybe Max. Max isn't so bad.
Yeah, especially now that she lost her brother.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that when we talk about loss, but I think that the character development piece is what I like the most about Stranger Things. Plus that and the nostalgia piece. I think I just genuinely really care about what happens to the characters, and that's what I think you enjoy just in general about shows that you love, is you care about what happens to the characters. You want to see what happens next to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit more about character development when it comes to Elle. Elle definitely is changing a lot. She's probably grown the most, obviously, from season 1 being this basically lab-grown child with special powers who can't really speak normally, who's got the shaved head. We first see her and she's like in a Johnny.
Right.
And now she's a teenage girl who has a boyfriend, and she has now a best friend, a girlfriend, who they weren't close before, and Max was a new character in season 2 anyway. But now we see Elle becoming her own person, and this relationship with Max is really cool. It's really cool to see her leaning into this girl relationship, leaning on her for advice about boys. I love that whole element. And I especially like the scene where Hopper assumes that Elle is in her bedroom with Mike again, and is upset about it and barges in, but then sees her hanging out with Max, having a normal girl sleepover. So I thought that was cool. The shopping montage when
Yes.
Max takes Elle shopping, it's very tropey, right? That whole like trying on clothes and the music montage, that whole thing. But it works. You love it with Elle. You love seeing her, literally come out of her shell of those sort of hand-me-down clothes that Hopper gave her, and owning a new style,
Right.
Being exposed to being a girl and shopping.
Right.
So that was what I had to say about Elle.
Oh, I don't really have much to say about the characters, I guess.
I like the twist. I love the whole Robin and Steve relationship. I love the new character, Robin. I think she's pretty bad. We don't swear on this podcast.
Oh, right.
But,
Yeah. Okay.
we talked about this. She's played by Maya Hawke. I think it was really, really well done.
She's a really good little actress.
Yeah, she really is.
I thought she was really good. And I thought it was a great plot twist that it
Yes.
turns out that she is gay. Yeah.
I love that because you want them, like, from the beginning. You knew there was tension.
Right.
You were like, okay, they're eventually going to get together. Dustin can see it. You got this great girl in front of you, Steve. Blah blah blah.
Right.
And then you think they're going to get together, and the Duffer Brothers throw us those little twists,
Yeah,
which
I like
love.
that. So I guess
Yeah.
I care. I guess I care about the older characters, like the older.
You just don't like Mike and Al.
I think I no. I think
And I
I
don't think
don't.
you like Lucas very much either.
I don't think I like adolescent boys that aren't mine.
Probably. But you like Dustin. Dustin's different.
But Dustin, I feel like, is develop cognitively and emotionally more advanced.
So I resonate the most with Dustin. Dustin reminds me of me
Yeah.
at that age, and that's probably why I like Dustin.
Okay. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I find the others annoying.
Yeah,
They're
I get
just
that.
annoying.
I get that. And the other new character I wanted to mention was Erica. I thought she was pretty awesome.
Is she the little sister?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like her too.
She joined the gang, and she's very cool, and she's holding her own as a little nerd expert, and again is critical in ultimately defeating the bad guys.
Yeah.
I like that group, that Robin, Steve, Dustin, Erica
Yes,
group.
I do too.
Yeah.
Okay. I care about them.
Yeah, and the comedy, there's a lot of comedy. Actually, there's comedy all throughout each season, but this particular season had a lot of comedic moments I thought were pretty cool, especially when Steve and Robin get like the truth serum, and they spend a whole episode high. I thought that was pretty funny. So let's end this Stranger Things discussion with talking about the topic that's in your wheelhouse and loss. You'd started off this episode talking about how there's a lot of loss. That's what first came to mind for you.
Right.
So where do you want to start with that? What comes to mind?
Joyce. I feel like what we're seeing a lot of in this season is Joyce's grieving process after the death of Bob from last season.
Shout out to Sean Astin.
Yeah. So we see her having flashbacks. We see her having some PTSD-like symptoms, really kind of reliving and having flashbacks. Does she go back to the actual place that happened? Yeah.
And
so
sees
and
him.
she sees him, which is a very realistic. That's not the right word. Experience, yeah. Of what would happen. And we see her resistance to like dating, to having a connection in a romantic kind of way with another man.
And that's about the grief, right?
Right. And we see her, she turns down a date with Hopper. And then we see her that night go home and pour herself a glass of wine and have like a TV dinner in front of the television. And we're seeing flashbacks of her doing that with Bob. And so in a way, that is how she's connecting with Bob and still connecting to his memory, is that she's still doing things that they would have done together. And so I thought that was really, they did a really good job with that, with depicting that in a really authentic way.
And I think too, we see what we talked about in previous episodes with Joyce and maybe some others, but we see that survivor's guilt, right? Because Bob was a sacrificial death.
Right.
He saved her life.
Right.
And multiple people's lives when he died at the hands of the Demogorgon last season. So we've got the sacrificial death, and now with Bob, and now we also have that same thing happen with Hopper.
I feel so bad for Joyce,
Right.
which is why I care about her character. Because,
apparently,
yes,
Hopper
now
might be dead.
two men that have sort of become involved with her family, this circle, have now died, and she had to essentially kill Hopper.
Yeah.
So talk about survivor's
That's
guilt.
tough.
And so I think it's really realistic that Joyce, after all of that, would say, screw this, I'm moving.
I was just going to say, talk to me about the normalcy of that as far as grief goes.
I mean, oftentimes, it's not a good idea to sort of pick up and sort of run away and move.
Well, especially when you have kids.
Right. Yeah. But in this situation where we're talking about sort of aliens and creatures and really significant trauma in this one town, I think it's not a bad idea. If I were her grief therapist, I probably would be pretty supportive of her moving and getting sort of a fresh start while still working on the grieving process about Bob and Hopper, but also kind of restarting. There's a lot of bad trauma memories there in that house.
Yeah, in the house,
in the town.
Yep.
Like, how do you? It's all, and it seems like it's all in the media there. It's swirling, so it's all around you. So I don't know how she could really process her grief in that space. And thinking about the kids too, it's probably beneficial for them to kind of reset,
right? Not
start over, not move on, but just kind of reset, build something new together.
The one of the, I don't know if it was on Facebook or a podcast I listened to, but somebody somewhere said Hawkins for me this season felt really small because I think so much of the episode was in one place, filmed in one place, and maybe them moving is sort of preparing us for season 4, where the landscape is expanded a little bit beyond Hawkins.
But I thought it was authentic to the process there, and I thought the way they sort of handled showing how the kids of various ages all reacted to that was pretty authentic too.
Yeah,
and
I
it's
agree.
sad, if you were ever an adolescent or a child and your best friend moved away, even if it was 2 towns away, it was a big deal.
It stinks.
Yeah, it's hard. So I thought that was interesting. And then the way that they really kind of leaned into Elle's experience of grief, losing Hopper.
Yeah.
I was glad that they did that they took some time at the end of the episode, at the end of the season, to sort of portray that a little bit.
Let's talk about that. So we see earlier on in the season Hopper struggling with parenting, and we're going to come back to this because I wrote down loss for Harper.
Yeah, he's losing his little girl.
Exactly.
Right. She's becoming a teenager. She's not wanting to play board games with him anymore, eat waffles. She's moving on, which is what adolescents do. And as parents of teenagers, like, that's really
Stinks,
hard,
man.
really hard,
It really
really
is.
sad. I wrote an article recently, well, not that recently, because I haven't been writing lately, but A Million Little Losses, where I
Did
talk
we do
about
an episode on that?
I don't think we did.
We probably should.
We talk about parenting and how it really feels.
Yeah.
No one really prepares you for how many losses you grieve as a parent. Not your children are still with them, but the versions of them you lose.
And your interactions with them.
Right. And so things change.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think we're witnessing in him, is he's missing his little girl, and he still loves her. She's still there. And there can be some really great stuff that comes out of this new stage, but he's really struggling with wanting her to kind of stay little as she was. And I don't remember his backstory. He had a daughter.
He had a daughter who died, and I don't
How
know.
old was she when she died?
I don't know. I think younger.
So he's never done this, but
No,
this
I
is
don't
totally
think he's ever
brand new
done
for
the
him.
teenage thing. But yeah, I wrote that down as for Hopper as far as loss, losing the innocent child that Elle was. And, Elle's a little bit of a special situation where, he had to teach her a lot of things about being a human being in the public. And the older she gets, the more growth she experiences. Again, he's losing those interactions, those moments, right? I doubt a plate of Eggos makes her as happy now as it did before, right?
Right.
Just those types of things. But to go back to Elle's loss and her grief, Hopper was working with Joyce on how to manage the teenage romantic relationship between Elle and Mike, and how to parent that, and how to deal with that situation. And we actually don't end up seeing the result of his preparation. He basically writes a letter or writes things down. He wrote down what he was supposed to say to Elle and to Mike. Didn't end up actually saying it. It went a different direction where he ended up actually yelling at Mike, and there was a whole big tense conflict element there. But we finally do get to see at the end that what he was writing down, it became a letter to Elle.
Right.
And it was really, really sweet. And I love that we got to hear it and see it, and it was after his death, apparent death. And we see Elle grieving and being there in that moment, reading his letter, and thinking of him,
Right.
and connecting to him. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of sadness. And also, whose mom? Karen's mom? Is Karen a person?
Karen
Nancy.
was
Nancy.
okay.
Nancy's
Karen's the other lifeguard.
mom. Okay.
Yeah.
So Nancy's mom, because she's the one who almost goes and has an affair with Billy. I'm so sorry about my brain.
It's okay.
I think it's an interesting, not really loss, but sort of life adjustment. She's really kind of, I think, lost her identity, and she doesn't really know who am I? I've got this really older adult teenage daughter. I've got a younger kid. There's no like romance and connection between my spouse and I. And here's this young guy who's showing me some attention. And ultimately she decides to not sort of pursue that. But we see her kind of struggling with that life transition. And I think that's pretty spot on, especially for a woman at that period of time.
Yes, absolutely.
Because she's sort of a housewife.
Yeah.
And her kids probably don't need her as much as they used to. So
Right.
who is she? What's her identity? What's her role?
Right. And I think it was ultimately really nice to see her make the decision to not go see Billy. And they have a younger daughter too. Right. Yeah. Mike's little sister. I want to talk about Steve's loss. And I think he lost his cool kid status. He's not a popular kid anymore. Right. I think he's changing. He's becoming exactly what he hoped he wouldn't become in high school. He's basically not, the prom king anymore. He's, more like Dustin. I think it's probably more like him. And the guys, the other podcast I wanted to shout out, Bald Move, the guys over there, they do a lot of great podcasts based on a lot of great shows like Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and all that stuff. But one of those guys made a point that as Steve became, more uncool, so to speak, he became
more likable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, is that interesting?
Yeah.
That element. But he, he is dealing with the fact that his identity is changing. He's still trying to get girls, but nothing's really clicking because he's working at this Scoob's place. And
well, there's a message there, right? That when you are able to sort of be authentically yourself, you are more likable.
Yeah.
In a way, potentially, because
absolutely.
You're authentic. You're not trying. You're not being phony. You're able to just kind of be who you are, and then the people that appreciate you for who you are the people to whom you will gravitate and who will sort of support you. And so it's nice to see him kind of figuring that out.
Yeah.
And that's a goal of adolescence.
Right.
What we kind of see with him and Nancy and Jonathan and Robin is we see these older adolescents. They're through the kind of messy, super awkward phase that the younger kids are going through.
They're just graduated.
Right. So they're really kind of like young adults. And so they're on the tail end of adolescence. And you kind of, I think, see in a really authentic way what that kind of looks like, figuring out, where am I going to be? What's important to me in terms of work? What's important to me in terms of identity? Where are my values? What do I want to fight for? Things like that. How do I buck against authority?
Right.
So those, I don't know why, but those stories are more interesting to me.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I think that was it I wanted to mention on Steve. But I really do love his character. And we were meant to hate him on season 1, rightfully so. He was kind of a butthead on season 1. But he was the bully, Nancy's boyfriend, and beat up and bullied Jonathan. Remember he broke his camera. Remember that?
Nope.
Okay. Anyway, I love the story arc of Steve.
I can hear all the eye rolling right now.
I love him as a character. Anyway, I have 2 more on the lost category. The first one is Will, and losing his friends.
Yeah, he's struggling with that.
Yeah, he really is. He's not interested in girls yet. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but he's more interested in, or relationships. He's more interested in, holding on to his group and what they did, and that those experiences, and being able to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, and maybe part of that is his post-traumatic stress response, right?
Yes.
Like going through what he went through. Maybe he's got this propensity to try to want to like revert to being a kid and holding on to that.
Absolutely. Well, he goes to Fort Will, or whatever it's called, Fort Byers in the woods there. Remember?
Yeah. Well, he then destroys it.
He then destroys it, but he goes there, I think, to, to your point, sort of go back to that moment.
Yeah,
connect
he does not want to move on. He wants to sort of hold on to his childhood,
well,
and Bob was also a loss for him.
Yes.
So I feel like poor Will. I
Yeah.
feel like no one's really paying attention to the fact that
Well,
like Will was kidnapped and
yeah,
almost died
that's
and
what I was gonna say.
possessed, and then his mom's boyfriend sacrificed himself and died, and his whole family went through trauma. And I feel like, which is pretty accurate to the 80s, nobody's like, hey, let's get him some therapy.
Yeah,
Let's do some work around this. Let's talk about it. He's just kind of left to do it on his own, which I think then explains why when he starts having like the prickling sensations, he doesn't tell anybody at first, because he hasn't really been given space and permission to sort of talk about the bad stuff.
Well, Mike and Lucas don't seem to care about him at all and what he's going through, and they seem to forget like all the trauma that he went through.
Yeah, no, which
in the
is
first 2 seasons.
Yeah,
it's consistent.
That's teenage boys.
Right,
yeah,
right.
It's appropriate
Like,
for
all right.
teenagers.
All right, we'll play D&D. Okay.
It'd be nice if it's sort of like old The Walking Dead with Carl and his parents. Lori,
Yeah.
like, can you watch your kids? Can maybe someone pay attention to their children,
Right.
and maybe after a day and a night wonder, where are my kids?
Where are they?
Where are they? They do sort of mention that at one point. I think it's Nancy's mom. At some point, maybe Joyce calls her and asks if she knows where the kids are, and
I
she's
don't
like,
really
"Yeah,
know.
I don't really know. They were at so and so's house. You know how kids
Yeah.
are," which I guess is kind of true to that time period. But
Yeah.
as a mom now, I'm can't imagine my kids being stuck in the bowels of the mall for like.
I can't imagine not knowing exactly where they are at any second of any day.
Well, our kids have like GPS on them
Yes,
with their
we
phones, so
we just
yeah,
talked
it's
about
totally
that.
different. But
Yeah.
that also was the time period then.
Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was. I just talked about that on the Shut Up and Dad podcast.
Yes, you
Everybody
did.
go check
I
that out.
did listen to
Yeah,
that.
you did listen
Yes,
to
I
that.
did.
Thank you, by the way. We just talked about how we know everywhere where our kids are now, and when we were kids, we did not. You know, we could disappear for hours.
My parents would still call me home though. Like
Yeah.
if I wasn't home when the streetlights
Right.
came on, my mom would come outside and scream my name on the back porch, and I would go running.
I don't know if my neighborhood was much bigger than yours, so I don't think she could do that. But if I didn't come home at a certain time, I'd be in trouble. The final element of loss I wanted to talk about was Dr. Alexei. It was sad
I don't
to
get
see
why
him.
people are so connected to him.
I just think he's a fun character, funny. I love how he had an affinity for Slurpees and ultimately was good. You know, he's a good soul. He wanted to help. He didn't want to be part of this Russian's evil spy group. And I love the relationship that he and Murray developed.
Yes.
And they were hanging out at the fair together. I love that. It was very endearing, very sweet. And it stinks that he had to bite the bullet and die. But
That's true. That the carnival, that was sweet watching them connect. Yeah.
Alexei's played by an actor who I didn't know before, Alec Utgoff. I think his last. I just want to say his last name.
Okay.
Utgoff. Utgoff.
Bless you.
Thank you. Anyway, so that is all of the notes that I had. Do you have any final thoughts about Stranger Things season 3?
Well, I had 0 notes.
You did pretty good though.
How long do we have to wait for the next one? Is this something that's like
I don't
every
know.
year?
So I wanted to talk about that a little bit because we know that when you're 13 years old, you grow pretty quickly.
Oh, wow.
And those kids grew a lot for only it have the time pass, I think, was like
Oh,
October
see, I don't
to
really
July.
feel like they did, but I think the next season
Well, Mike is
it's
like
going to
huge
be
now.
it's going to be, but then I think they're going to look like men. So I wonder if the next season will jump ahead a few
Jump
years.
ahead a little bit. That's probably smart of them
Actually,
to do.
would be really interested in that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, all right, so now what?
Either you film it now and release it like in next year, or
No, I think I want it, and then it gets kind of messy. Like, does Joyce move on and find someone else, and then Hopper really is alive, and what happens with that time that they missed? I guess I would be really interested. I'm more interested to know what happens in 2 to 3 years for this group of characters than what happens to them in 4 months.
right.
So I
you're
guess
okay
if I would
waiting.
prefer it being
Later.
later.
Yeah, season 2 and 3 are back to back pretty much as
Yeah.
far as the timeline goes. So having it be a couple of years later might make a lot
Was
of sense.
season 1 and 2 pretty back to back too?
I don't know. I think it was longer. It was a longer time period because when we left Elle and Hopper, she was still living in the woods at the end of season 1.
Yeah, that's true.
And then she clearly is, his ward essentially in season 2.
Okay, all right. So
yeah.
I guess overall, really well written,
Yes.
really cleverly filmed, good acting,
Great production design.
great production design. I
Love the
appreciate the
nostalgia.
attention to detail about, building in the mall as a character. Like I like when Sex and the City was always a
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
I like that. I appreciate that on its artistic merit. I really appreciate it. It's just the subject matter is not my thing.
Yeah, it's not.
But I know the three of you really enjoy it, and I like kind of being part of that. So, so it's something that connects our family.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. It's kind of like when people used to watch kind of network television, and it would be like every Thursday night a new episode of like Lost was on or something. So the next day everybody would be talking about the episode. It's sort of neat to see that happening. It drops on July 4th. So then for the next week, everybody's talking about Stranger Things. So it's a neat way to sort of feel connected. I like that it connects us and binds us all together.
Absolutely. And
So I appreciate that.
That's going back to the nostalgia piece. I love sharing all of those things with the boys, and Jacob more than Jackson, but they both seem to really like a lot of the same things that I liked when I was a kid, like Indiana Jones and Star Wars and Back to the Future. So I love sharing those things with them as well.
I also really like anytime a series, a movie handles grief and isn't afraid to handle it.
Yes.
And does it in an authentic way, in a respectful way, and kind of leans into it.
Authenticity is the key.
Yeah.
I think.
So I really appreciate that.
Right. Overall for me, I loved it. It was great. I'm excited to see what happens next. I liked it more than season 2. I did not like it as much as season 1, but that's tough to do. Season 1 was epic. But I'm excited to see what happens next. Do you have anything else?
I do not.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for today, everybody. Thank you so very much for listening. You can learn more on this by checking out those 2 podcasts I referenced. Well, first you need to watch it if you haven't watched it yet. But Behind the Scenes, Stranger Things 3, that's a podcast produced by Netflix. And then Dungeons and Demigorgons, that's a Stranger Things podcast by Bald Move. Check those ones out. Those are a lot of fun. Go ahead and follow us on Facebook, everybody, at Changing Perspectives Podcast, and on Instagram at Changing Perspectives Blog. You can check out our website by going to changingperspectivesblog.com or send us an email to changingpodcast@gmail.com. Go ahead and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode, and we will see you next time. Say bye, Jenny.
Bye, Jenny.
The Changing Perspectives podcast is produced, recorded, and edited by Dizzy-Bird Studios, Whitman, Massachusetts. Visit Dizzy-Bird Studios on Facebook, facebook.com/Dizzy-Bird Studios.